Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining the Postgame Pint. I'm John Bonus of Twins Daily. I'll be your host. Before I introduce my panelists, here's a couple of things you can look for. We want you guys to drive the discussion, so I want to call your attention to a couple of things. You'll find a Q&A area for questions. We're more likely to see your question if you put it in the Q&A area than if you put it in the chat, but I do want you to encourage you to use the chat area as well. That's where you can discuss topics, respond to us. And we'll start by asking you and our panelists what their post-game pint is. I'll also mention that you can raise your hand in the chat area, I think. If you want me to unmute you and you want to join the discussion, raise your hand and I'll try to get to you. With that, let's introduce our panelists, and they can each tell us what their post-game pint is today. Jeremy Nygaard, welcome. And what's your post-game pint?
So I got my tribute to Seth here with a big old glass of water. That's just one. And then my actual drink of choice, right out of the fridge, a little Blue Moon Light Sky.
Oh, I don't think I've had that.
If you haven't had it, it's fantastic.
Is it a seltzer?
Nope. It is it's a citrus wheat. And so I went all over when my wife actually bought them first, and I enjoyed them and tried to find them on tap and couldn't. And then we went to Colorado for a wedding, and I went to the Blue Moon Brewery and asked the guy where else I could find them on tap. And he said, "You are in the only place in America that serves this beer on tap." So
wow. Cool. All right.
It was a well worth it trip.
Cool. Seth, what's your post game pint of choice tonight?
Well, getting a little bit crazier every time we do this. I was water the first few times, and then the third time, I think I brought a can of guard sauce. It had been emptied about a month earlier. Yeah. Today we're going with the Diet Dr. Pepper. Tastes more like Dr. Pepper. It's actually not bad.
I've got to imagine. I don't see any post-game pints from our attendees in there. I've got to imagine the Bieber start made some people want to drink. Ted, what did you resort to?
Just a Surly Todd.
Oh, Todd the Axeman. Nicely done. I'm taking a break from the beer because I'm in the Target Field press box. They don't allow beer here. So, and I'm also going to be wearing the mask for the duration because that's part of the deal with being in the press box too, as part of the COVID sanctions they have. The Twins lose tonight 2-0. The big story was Justin Bieber and tying a Major League Baseball record for strikeouts through the first two games of the season. First two starts of the season. Jeremy, what's your takeaway from this game?
Well, I believe you just called him Justin Bieber.
Oh, did I really?
But at least you corrected yourself by saying he tied a record rather than
I'm sorry. Shane Bieber. Sorry about that. Shane Bieber.
So, he was obviously the story. I think it's probably more like Cy Bieber at this point. But the thing that I was most captivated by, and I watched a lot of this game on my phone, the first out of the game, I think, was a fly out to left field. And then I'm like, oh, there's a lot of people there. And then I'm like, wait, no, there's not. And then I just found myself trying to the Twins just fanned pitches for the last 3 hours.
You broke up there for a second there, Jeremy. Was your topic Bieber's performance, or was it the lack of fans in the stands, or the Fox programming on it?
Yeah, I think the easy thing is the Bieber performance, but I was more captivated by the people in the stands, or the fake people, the virtual people.
Okay.
That was weird. It was something.
So I want everybody's impressions because I could not see it at all. Because I wasn't at home. I didn't get to see that broadcast at all.
Have you seen MLB The Show or like a recent baseball video game?
Sure.
That's all. They superimposed that crowd.
Okay.
Onto the seats.
All right. And good, bad, what do we think?
I mean, I guess
not a ringing endorsement.
Yeah, I had seen it. I think on Twitter during the Cubs and Brewers game, I think, or something like that, the first weekend of the season. And I guess it kind of took me by surprise tonight because I had forgotten about it. It's weird because it's only really when a ball is put in play down the lines. Like behind the plate, they have all the cutouts. And then if there's camera angles to the left or right, when a batter's in the box, but you can still see the seats, there's no fans there. So all of a sudden, on a pop-up, the stands are full.
And at one point, Kepler caught one to end an inning, and as he ran past the fans, it was like the digital imaging cut off his head, so his head was cut off.
Yeah, that happened at Cruz too, I think.
Yeah, it was interesting and really unnecessary. I mean, I don't know that it brings anything to the viewing. There's not people there, so why do you have to put people there? The fat heads are cool. The big heads are cool because you look and you're like, oh yeah, that's that guy. These are just virtual people that don't have faces and don't look like anything. They're just there. They're not.
I will tell you this. This is my first time here during a regular season game. So I've been here during the scrimmages, and they've had the fake crowd noise, and it was a little more jarring being here for a regular season game with the fake crowd noise. They're clearly doing their best to try and make it. You can tell. They're giving the appropriate sound reaction on a called for strike, or when there's 2 strikes, hey, everybody's standing up and clapping like they're playing that sound. But it does just feel odd. It's not I think the white noise is probably appreciated a little bit, but you can still hear a lot of what's going on in the dugouts. And it still feels unnatural, I guess, for lack of a better word. Not bad, but not great. Seth, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry to cut you off. Were you there for a summer camp game that was a night game, or were you only there for daytime?
No, I was here for night games as well.
Okay.
In fact, I was almost exclusively for night games. So
I almost would think it would be weirder with it being dark and empty.
Yeah, well, that might be the case. Those summer games were ending after 7 innings, so it might be partly because it was later at night.
Yeah.
Seth, what did you take away from this game?
Yeah, definitely more than what was going on in the stands. First of all, and I invited a couple of Cleveland bloggers to join us. I don't know if they have, or maybe they'll listen later, but if Cleveland doesn't have a major injury to their starting pitching staff or some sort of COVID-related illness to their starting pitching staff, they're going to the World Series. Their starting rotation is that good. Jeremy alluded to it earlier. Shane Bieber's winning the Cy Young. Nobody's close to as good to him as him in baseball. Good pitching beats good hitting. The Twins have generally great hitting, but not this year so far. Even though they've scored a lot of runs, they've pretty much not been very good at hitting. And great pitching will beat good hitting every time. And Shane Bieber was incredible. And then Karinchak, I think that's how you say that, comes in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when he threw 3 straight breaking balls, when you know that he throws 98 to Kepler and wasn't even close. So, I mean, I realize, Clevenger isn't quite Bieber, but he's really good. Carrasco has been up and down, but when he's healthy, he's really good. And their 4, 5, 6 starters are all really good. So,
yeah, I think it's worth pointing out that as good as this lineup, as we expect this lineup to be, they've now faced, I would consider, 3 top-tier pitchers in their first 6 games. And they haven't done particularly well versus any of them. Lucas Giolito, they got to in the first inning, but they got to him in the first inning because Whiteside committed 3 bad defensive plays in that first inning and part of the reason that they scored all those runs is because there was a number of bad defensive plays behind them. Didn't really touch Keuchel, and now we're completely overmatched by Bieber today. To the point where it wasn't even a matter of having competitive at bats and being able to run up his pitch count. I mean, they just couldn't do anything. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jeremy.
I read on Twitter that they're gonna end up playing 7-inning doubleheaders. If the Indians play doubleheaders, it's gonna be a problem for anybody either of those games because you're not going to get to their bullpen.
Right.
And I don't know how often that's going to happen, but if that happens a lot, that's even more of an advantage to a team that has pitchers that can go that deep and are that good.
But and to Seth's point, even if they don't win, even if Cleveland doesn't win the division, they're certainly going to be making the playoffs with a 16-team playoff field. And running up against that, that lineup in a 3-game series is going to be real tough. Now, we'll see how tough because we've got a 4-game series against those same guys that are likely to be, carrying water for them in October. So we'll see, what happens in games 2, 3, and 4 here. But boy, I think the Twins lineup is really, really good. I think the Twins bullpen is really, really good. But I think Cleveland's starting pitching is really, really good. And that might be the biggest advantage of all.
I think the Twins have 5 or 6 or maybe even 7 guys that you could either consider number 2 starters, maybe number 3s, and even their 5, 6, 7, 8 pitchers are probably 4s and 5s, which is good over 162 game season. It'll be good for them over 60 games. When you get to the playoffs, you need these guys.
Well, and then Zach Plesac, and on top of the 3 guys they have at the top of the rotation, they got Zach Plesac the other night, who ends up going 8 innings and shutting down the White Sox lineup. We talked a little bit on the Patreon going into the Geek this morning versus that White Sox lineup that we were so impressed with in the first series. Their starting pitching gave up 4 earned runs in 20 innings versus those guys in three games. I mean, first of all, just 20 innings is impressive versus them, and to only give up 4 earned runs during that time really shows how good it. And that was, by the way, their 4, 5, and 6 pitchers. None of those that wasn't Carrasco, Clevenger, or Bieber. Those guys didn't pitch in that series.
Yeah.
So
it's turn it around just slightly and say the Twins hitters are not doing anything, even though they scored a ton of runs. I think, John, you guys have mentioned on your podcast too that they've just been really good at putting them together to get big innings a few times. But I had to write this down because I didn't know if I'd see it. Kepler 182, Donaldson 143, Polanco 240, Rosario 182, Garver 154, Sano 059, and Buxton 167 in 2 games, admittedly. And all of this, we're admittedly talking 6 games. These guys are all going to be good. At some point, they're going to turn it around, no question about it. But these guys look lost. Miguel Sano can't hit a fastball right down the middle at 93 anymore right now. And Bieber deserves some credit, but you were right. Yeah, there's a lot of guys on this roster that just are not ready or something.
But let's not get lost in that fact that tonight's game was one bad 0-2 pitch away from probably still being a 0-0 game and being played right now.
Yeah,
that's a really good point.
So, yeah, the Indians do have a great rotation. I tweeted that before the game. Like, I hate everything about Cleveland, but I especially hate that they have really, really good starting pitching. But the Twins can be bad and still be in a game because they have a really good lineup, which hasn't been great. Their starting pitchers have been really good, and they have a really, really deep bullpen. So I'm not going to crown the Indians yet. They're not winning anything. At least I hope not. Besides tonight's game.
Yeah, it's a really good point that, in fact, their lineup was not particularly productive tonight or particularly threatening. And you're right. I mean, Barrios made Lindor look silly on that first at bat and then had him down 0-2 and then gave him exactly what he was looking for, exactly where he wanted it. And that was, in fact, the difference. And let's also not forget that Polanco in the 6th inning, if he hits that ball, almost to any other part of the park, has a decent chance of going off the wall and maybe scoring a couple runs as well as both Buxton and Kepler ended up getting on base versus Bieber too. So stuff can happen in baseball. Even as dominant as that was, it was a closer game than even the 2-0 score might have indicated. Ted, how about you? What'd you take away from this game?
Yeah, I think it was 3 main little things in that I think from the get-go, Barrios looked a lot stronger than he did against the White Sox, obviously, but he had a different repertoire tonight. Obviously, he was probably ramped up from opening day, but he was working more 93, 95 instead of 95, 97, and he was getting whiffs, which he did not do in Chicago. And Seth tweeted about this plenty too, but his biggest problem tonight was efficiency, and I really think that's where his next step is. Instead of going 3 pitches or 4 pitches after 2-2 or 3-2, just punching that guy out or getting him out, and not nibbling and that kind of thing, or losing a hitter. He just way too many pitches, drives his pitch count up.
Was anybody else surprised that he ended up facing the top of the Indians order the 3rd time through the lineup in that 5th inning with 90-some pitches behind him? I was a little surprised that Baldelli stuck with him at that point.
I thought after the 4th they would send him back out just because the 4th looked so good.
Yeah, that's true.
But then to the point that you guys have touched on with, the Twins prior to tonight scored 20. I think they scored this year or something like that. They scored 20 of them in the first 2 innings. So there's been a lot of gaudy numbers, but yeah, they're not hitting. Josh Donaldson has been a complete nothing thus far. Miguel Sano is way behind on timing. Garver hasn't hit. Kepler hit the first game of the year, but hasn't hit since then. So that, and then, yeah, I thought that sequence to Lindor really was the game. As much as Bieber dominated the lineup and the lineup didn't do anything, Barrios went curveball, and it was an 0-2 count, and he's owned Lindor throughout his career. And I sat there thinking, this is going to be a fastball. That's fine, but you can't go center cut with it.
Right.
I would add, and I think Jeremy brought up a good point. If that's not a home run and he maybe gets a strikeout, he's 8 less pitches. And instead of going to Littell in the 6th, you probably go to Duffy or May or somebody else. So, but I think, and maybe I'm overthinking this a little bit, but I didn't at any point think the Twins had a chance against Bieber, except as that Polanco fly ball was going to center. And maybe Rocco Baldelli's smart enough to realize, okay, we're going Littell and Thorpe to end this last 4 innings because we're not scoring 2 runs off of Bieber. Let's just hope we get a chance with someone else in the 9th, and then Karinchak was nasty too.
And to save the bullets for the next 2, 3, 4 games, the bullpen bullets for the next 2, 3, 4 games. Although I think it's somewhat encouraging that Cleveland didn't do anything versus Littell and Thorpe either.
Yeah,
I think it was
that's what I thought too. Because Littell was bad in the first outing, right?
Yeah.
And so going to him in a game that didn't look winnable and having him – he wasn't great. His first inning was pretty rough, right? But then he was better his second inning through. So that might be better, moving forward, because he was the guy that looked the worst out of anybody in their bullpen. And now that he got some zeros under his belt, maybe that'll help going forward. But, yeah, certainly I never felt like there was a chance – like Seth said, even when they had 2 guys on with 1 out, I'm like, maybe. Yeah, maybe not. Because that guy, Bieber's just too good. He's too good.
It was interesting, though, and I will agree with you. I mean, once he started rolling, it was over. But when Buxton got on first and he started, I don't know, like throwing over, speeding up. I don't know if he actually threw over, but he sped up his windup. Or his delivery, and from that point forward in that inning, it felt like he was more human. Then they get 2 guys on, and instead of the mindset of, hey, I've struck out everyone tonight, he was also worried about a runner. And I realize it's a 2-run game, so you don't want to give up those bases, but it was nice to see that, hey, there's a crack in the armor here. He's not mentally just locked into, I'm going to mow everyone down.
My take on the game, well, the one thing I wanted to call attention to is a couple of defensive plays where our defensive performances, one good and one not so good. It was nice to see Buxton get to that ball in the gap today. It showed, I'll tell you, from here, it was not clear that he was going to be that anybody was going to be able to get to that ball. It seemed like a 50-50 ball, and probably it was a 50-50 ball for Buxton, and it was probably less than that for other outfielders. So it was encouraging to me to see him go full steam like that, get to that ball, and show that his foot is fairly healthy. Now, I still think he's a long ways away from being an asset offensively, but it was good to see him perform defensively. And then I've got to call out – I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think Doe pointed out that ball had like a 35% catch probability or
Is that
something
right?
like that. So yeah, it was a little less than 50-50. And it wasn't pretty, but I'm guessing it was darting and maybe knuckling a little bit because you could see him really focused in on making sure it landed in his glove.
Yeah, I think
But it
that's a
looked,
good.
I mean, it looked kind of easy. Like,
Yeah.
he kind of dove, but didn't really have to dive. Like,
Right.
he got there quicker than I think he thought he was going to get there.
Yeah,
Which is
I
good.
thought so too.
Very good.
Yeah, I thought so too. I mean, I off the bat, looking where it was going, I thought, ooh, that looks like it could be trouble. And then it was not trouble. It was not even close to trouble. And I thought, well, that's Buxton. Buxton makes that look a lot easier than it probably is. And then we've got to talk a little bit. We've talked a lot about Sano's defense and what it was going to look like coming into this. And what we said is there are going to be times during games where he's going to get caught doing something he's not used to doing, and it's not going to go well. And we saw two of those plays tonight. The first one where it's between the little ground ball between the pitcher's mound and first base, where he ends up fielding it and not and trying to gently toss it to I think it was Littell, and just a brutal gentle toss. And then the one where he ends up ranging wide to get a ball at second base, clearly way beyond what he should be reaching for, and then running to first base and not being able to get there. And that looked like a Keystone Cop material. I do want to call out one other thing on that play, though. I love that Luis Ariz comes running over there, and at the last second, he's calling for the ball to try and pick off the runner at the end of it. I thought I just love Luis Ariz as a baseball player. He's just a ball player. He's always thinking about stuff like that. So I thought that was.
I think
See, I'll never complain about a guy making an error. I mean, Sano is, for instance, the underhand throw. I mean, that's a play guys make errors on all the time. But as far as if he's trying to range too far to his right, it means he's trying to do too much. And that's where the time will come in and how far a rise can go, or knowing where that shift is with the second baseman. I'm never going to question a guy trying too hard. So kind of at some point, like we've said all along, it is what it is. There are going to be those moments like that, and we'll just have to accept them because hopefully he'll start hitting soon.
Well, I also think it's just a matter of experience. It's just going to be a matter of that's the sort of thing that you learn when you're playing there. I think he's got the athletic ability to play there. He just hasn't played there a lot. And so that's the sort of thing that you, after one or two times of trying to range way farther away from first base than you should be, you start recognizing, oh, that's not mine. I don't need to get that anymore.
Yeah, and the throw he made to Littell, I think he got caught in between, because he threw it overhand, but I think he was in between with, this isn't a underhand toss, but also I don't need to rocket it at him, and he was kind of late getting there, so it was just a goofy throw. But the one where he was running back and Arias threw it to him too, I think, getting put in that shift on that, because he was shifted over almost to where a traditional second baseman would play, understanding that you're not at third base anymore and you have to cover first. And those are instincts that I think, are going to take time.
Yeah, I think his instincts will develop on that stuff.
Sano's going to look really good when he has to dig the ball, because he does that well. He's going to look really good when he gets to unleash his cannon. He's going to look really not good when he's got to make those moves like he did tonight, which are not traditional moves. Right. And it's always going to be an adventure when there's a pop-up, because he's always struggled with pop-ups. Yeah, and I think that's a trade you're willing to make. And honestly, I'll be willing to make that trade for a number of years, as long as that means Nelson Cruz is playing DH, right?
Yeah, as long as Sano's bat comes around, right?
Right, but if Sano's not playing first, he's a DH. And if he's a DH, that means Nelson Cruz is somewhere else. And that probably means the lineup isn't as good as it is right now, or has the potential to be right now. I do want to ask you, John, is Aaron giving you a funny look, like because he needs a ride home, or he's not waiting for you to bring him home?
Aaron's got the game story for the Athletics tonight, so I think he's staying much later than I'm going to be staying tonight.
Oh, okay. I wanted to check. I don't know what's going on around you.
Do you like the background here with the industrial beam behind me? I thought that was a nice look for the.
It's a good look.
let's see if there's anything else I have there. I mean, I'll just add one other thing I talked about last night. I'll add it today, and if none of you guys can pick other topics, go ahead. Last night, Arise batted leadoff, and I would have liked to see him lead off again tonight, especially versus somebody like Bieber. I thought Arise had, again, some of the best at-bats against Bieber, against a really good dominant pitcher. I think I trust Arise as much as I trust, or maybe more, than I trust anybody else in this lineup to draw out an at-bat and make a pitcher work. Again, I don't want to be too critical because Max Kepler had an amazing year last year out of the leadoff spot, so I'm not going to be critical about it. But boy, I'd like
that's got to be
that position.
Yeah, that's got to be the game plan against Bieber. The only way, if you're not going to get to him with the bat, you got to run his pitch count up. And if you're not going to have bats that go 7, 8, 9 pitches, and it's really going to be difficult because I don't think a lot of guys are following off what he's throwing. They're just completely missing it. But Arise is a guy that'll
or taking it. We saw a lot of strikeouts looking tonight.
But I mean, a strike's going to be a strike, and if they're going to swing and miss, you're not going to be able to run those at bats up. But I think last night Arise had like 3-3-2 counts, and he's following balls off. And so if you can, like they showed the graphic at one point where he had like 3 single-digit innings, and it's like if you can throw 8 or 9 pitches, you're not going to get him out of the game. And I don't even know what he ended up with. Did he break 100? Because
I think it was at 102.
101.
And
101.
And with the exception of the inning with 2 guys on, they were low stress pitches. I mean, you're pitching out of the full windup, and that's the thing that Barrios. I mean, he's not super efficient, but he ends up with guys on base a lot that he's got to. I don't think she likes me talking about Barrios like this, but where he's got guys on base and. It might just be one pitch, but you're worried about a guy on base, and those pitches are more stressful pitches. Bieber didn't have more than a handful of stressful pitches tonight, and he probably could have came up for the 9th. Obviously, when you have a guy do what that dude did to the Twins in the 9th inning, it didn't matter. But that's got to be the game plan against him is get him out of the game, because if you don't really have a shot.
I think Bieber had 55 pitches through 5 innings. So, he
it was
absolutely cruising for the first 5.
That's where I was going to go, though, too, was Arias's at-bats out of the entire lineup tonight with as many guys like foolish or got, caught guessing and watched pitches down the middle of the zone or whatever. He was the one guy that constantly spit on a couple of tough curveballs, and he put balls in play that I think he had 1 hit, maybe 2, but he lined that ball hard to the outfield, and he put the bat on the wall. I know Smalley talked last night on the broadcast about the Twins wanting or potentially should get him in the leadoff spot, and then saying, well, if that happens, what does that mean for Kepler? Doesn't he bat, 6th or 7th? And Rosario's batting 5th for most of the year. If you bump Kepler down to 5th, I don't think that's an awful option either. I mean, if a guy's going to
love that option. That's exactly
right.
What I
if a guy's going to hit 30 home runs in a regular season, let him hit home runs with guys on base.
Well,
sometimes you want to put your best lineup against the best pitchers. And as this conversation is going, you think of Arise and the type of at-bats he has. This is a game, and he hasn't even played really yet this year. Lamont Wade should probably be in the lineup to foul off pitches, to take walks, to do that. Adrianza's good at that kind of thing. And you're not going to take Donaldson out. You're not going to take the obvious guys out. So it's difficult, and you want to put your best lineup out there. But, I think it's tough. And as much as I'm fine with whatever I don't really care about the lineup. But, I mean, they're gonna score. They're going to put things together. Arise is the guy that just makes the most sense from a old school perspective, because he's not a great on base guy. He's a great batting average guy. But he also just owns the strike zone. He fully is in control of it. And that's maybe what matters most.
All right. Well, I want to thank you guys all for joining me. I hope everybody and all the attendees will thank the panelists, Jeremy Nygaard, Seth Stohs, and Ted Schwerzler, for joining us. Thanks all of you for joining the Postgame Pint, and a special thank you to those of you courageous enough to put something in the webinar chat. We appreciate that. We appreciate those who participate. If you missed any of this, you can find a recording of it tomorrow on our YouTube page. You can also find it on our Twins Daily Facebook page and on our game recap. And then our next post-game pint will be tomorrow night. Seth will be hosting it. And as always, you can always find the next post-game pint at postgamepint.com. We'll see you tomorrow night, and win Twins.